One of the most talked about discussions surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles right now has nothing to do with a trade, an injury, or even a training camp battle. Instead, it revolves around a question that has immediately sparked debate across the NFL. Where should Jalen Hurts rank among the league's quarterbacks heading into the 2026 season? As training camp gets closer, with the Eagles scheduled to report on July 28th, a new set of quarterback rankings released through ESPN has created plenty of discussion. The rankings were built from opinions gathered from NFL executives, coaches, and scouts around the league, making them more than just a media list. These are evaluations coming directly from people who spend their lives studying players, building rosters, and preparing game plans. And when the top 10 quarterbacks for 2026 were revealed, one name was missing: Jalen Hurts. At the top of the rankings were familiar names. Josh Allen was voted the #1 quarterback in football. Patrick Mahomes followed at number 2, reigning MVP Matthew Stafford landed at number 3. Joe Burrow came in 4th, while Lamar Jackson rounded out the top 5. Those names are hardly surprising. For several years now, Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, Jackson, and Stafford have consistently been viewed as the elite group of quarterbacks in the NFL. The order changes from season to season depending on awards, injuries, playoff success, and individual performance, but the names remain largely the same. The real controversy starts after that. Dak Prescott was ranked 6th. Justin Herbert was 7th. Drake May entered the top 10 at 8th. Jared Goff was 9th. Caleb Williams claimed the final spot at number 10. That means Hurts was left outside the top 10 entirely. For Eagles fans, that immediately raises a question: how can a quarterback with Hurts' accomplishments be overlooked? What makes this debate even more interesting is that the rankings become far more subjective once you get past the top 5. Year after year, the names from 6 through 10 change dramatically. One strong season can propel a quarterback into the rankings. One disappointing year can knock him out completely. Looking back at the previous year's rankings proves that point. Entering the 2025 season, Patrick Mahomes was ranked 1st, Josh Allen 2nd, Joe Burrow 3rd, Lamar Jackson 4th, and Jaden Daniels 5th. Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, and Baker Mayfield completed the top 10. Fast forward a year, and several names have shifted. Daniels is gone, Mayfield is gone, Hurts is gone. Drake May and Caleb Williams have entered the conversation. That volatility shows how quickly opinions change around quarterbacks in the NFL. Still, the discussion surrounding Hurts is unique because his evaluation depends on what people value most. If the focus is purely on passing statistics and traditional quarterback play, some evaluators place him outside the top 10. If leadership, toughness, winning ability, and playoff performance are considered, the argument becomes much stronger in Hurts' favor. After all, this is a quarterback who owns Super Bowl MVP credentials. This is a quarterback who has repeatedly demonstrated the ability to perform under pressure. This is a player whose leadership has been praised throughout his career. Yet critics point to his 2025 season as evidence that he should not currently be ranked among the NFL's elite. The argument centers around the fact that Hurts did not consistently perform at a top 10 level throughout the season. The Eagles' offense struggled at times. Protection issues surfaced. The running game disappeared for stretches. Offensive consistency became a challenge. Even so, the numbers tell an interesting story. Hurts completed just under 65% of his passes. He threw for approximately 3,200 yards. He recorded 25 touchdown passes against only 6 interceptions. Those interception numbers become even more impressive when considering that 4 of them came in a single game against the Los Angeles Chargers. His yards per attempt remained solid at 7.1. And perhaps most importantly, when combining his passing and rushing production, Hurts accounted for 33 total touchdowns while committing only 6 interceptions all season. That hardly sounds like a quarterback who completely fell apart. In fact, many Eagles fans would probably agree that the offense often looked worse than the statistics actually suggest. Despite the frustrations many experienced while watching the offense operate throughout the season, Hurts still managed to generate productive numbers. Even during a year considered disappointing by some standards, he continued producing at a level many quarterbacks around the league would gladly accept. Advanced metrics provide even more context. His overall PFF grade ranked 11th among quarterbacks. His passing grade also ranked 11th. He he finished inside the top 10 in passing touchdowns. Another criticism frequently directed at Hurts is that he relies too heavily on short throws and checkdowns. However, some of the data challenges that narrative. His average depth of target ranked 8th in the NFL. That suggests he continued attacking downfield rather than simply taking easy underneath completions. And when it comes to explosive plays, Hurts remains among the league's best. Since 2022, he has thrown 28 touchdown passes, traveling at least 25 air yards. That number exceeds several quarterbacks who are often praised as superior passers. It highlights something Eagles fans have known for years. When Hurts is in rhythm, his deep ball can be one of the most dangerous weapons in football. The question now becomes whether 2026 will be the season he reminds everyone of that fact. Training camp is approaching quickly, a new season is almost here, and few players on the Eagles roster will face more scrutiny than the franchise quarterback. Some around the league believe he belongs comfortably inside the top 10. Others place him just outside that group. What nobody seems to dispute is that Hurts has an opportunity to completely reshape the conversation once the season begins. If he delivers a strong campaign, these rankings will look very different next year. But for now, the debate is alive, and Eagles fans have every reason to pay attention because the perception of Jalen Hurts across the NFL may be one of the biggest storylines heading into training camp. Do you believe Jalen Hurts should have been ranked inside ESPN's top 10 quarterbacks for 2026? And if so, where would you place him on your own list? What makes this conversation even more fascinating is that Hurts was not completely ignored by the people participating in the rankings. He actually appeared among the honorable mentions, which tells you that executives, coaches, and scouts across the league still view him as being right on the edge of that top 10 tier. And when you look at the names grouped alongside him, that becomes even more interesting. Among the honorable mentions were Sam Darnold, Jaden Daniels, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield, Trevor Lawrence, and Jalen Hurts. That's not a list of average quarterbacks. Those are players who have all generated significant discussion around the league, and in some cases led playoff runs or put together impressive statistical seasons. The fact that Hurts is being discussed in that company shows that league evaluators still recognize his value. The disagreement isn't about whether he is a quality starting quarterback. The disagreement is about exactly where he belongs among the NFL's best, and that distinction matters. Because when people hear that Hurts was left out of the top 10, some immediately react as if the league suddenly believes he isn't a franchise quarterback anymore. That isn't what's happening here at all. Instead, what we're seeing is a reflection of how competitive the quarterback position has become. Think about it for a moment. Josh Allen is coming off another elite season. Patrick Mahomes remains one of the most accomplished quarterbacks of his generation. Matthew Stafford just captured MVP honors. Joe Burrow continues to be one of the league's most efficient passers. Lamar Jackson remains one of the most dynamic players in football. Then you have younger stars like Caleb Williams and Drake May generating enormous momentum after impressive performances. The margin between being ranked 6th and being ranked 11th is incredibly small. That's why many analysts continue to argue that Hurts is much closer to the top 10 than he is to the middle of the pack. What may ultimately separate Hurts from some of the quarterbacks ahead of him isn't arm talent, athleticism, or even production. It may simply be consistency. When Hurts is playing at his best, he absolutely looks like a top-tier quarterback. We've seen him dominate games through the air. We've seen him take over with his legs. We've seen him perform in playoff environments where many quarterbacks struggle. We've seen him lead one of the most successful stretches of football the Eagles organization has enjoyed in recent years. The challenge entering 2026 is proving that level can be maintained over an entire season. That's why training camp becomes so important. Every storyline surrounding this football team will eventually circle back to the quarterback position. Can Hurts elevate the offense? Can he return to the level that made him one of the most respected players in football? Can he silence critics who believe his best seasons are behind him? Those are questions that won't be answered by rankings, polls, or off-season debates. They'll be answered on the field. One statistic that continues to stand out is how productive Hurts remained despite all the criticism surrounding the offense. When a quarterback throws 25 touchdown passes and only 6 interceptions, that's typically the profile of a player having a very successful year. Add his rushing production to the equation, and suddenly you're looking at 33 total touchdowns. Many quarterbacks ranked ahead of him would gladly take those numbers. That's why some around the league continue to emphasize the qualities that don't always show up on a stat sheet: leadership, toughness, poise under pressure, winning mentality. One AFC offensive coach participating in the evaluation process reportedly summed it up perfectly. Despite the ups and downs, the coach still believes in Hurts because of his Super Bowl credentials, his leadership qualities, and the toughness he displays every week. And that's something Eagles fans have seen firsthand. Whether it's playing through adversity, handling criticism, or responding after difficult performances, Hurts has consistently demonstrated a level of mental strength that teammates and coaches respect. Those traits may not always move a player up a ranking list, but they absolutely matter inside an NFL locker room. As the countdown to training camp continues, the reality is that Hurts has a massive opportunity sitting right in front of him. The expectations remain high. The spotlight remains bright, and every practice, every preseason appearance, and every regular season game will contribute to shaping the narrative around him. Right now, some evaluators see him as the 11th best quarterback in football. Others would place him comfortably inside the top 10, but by the end of the 2026 season, none of those opinions may matter if Hurts delivers the kind of year Eagles fans know he is capable of producing. The next chapter of this story is about to begin, and it may end with Jalen Hurts reminding the entire NFL exactly why he has been one of the most important players in Philadelphia's success over the last several years. The story essentially comes full circle when you remember where Jalen Hurts was just a few years ago in the eyes of the football world. There was a time when people questioned whether he could even become a long-term starter in the NFL. There were debates about his passing ability. There were questions about whether he could consistently win games from the pocket. Every offseason seemed to bring another round of skepticism. Yet